Good afternoon. Thank you all for being here. If it is your intention to be with the Memphis Interfaith Coalition for Action and Hope panel, you are in the right place. If that is not your hope, you're stuck here now. So thank you for joining us. If this is an organization you are familiar with, you already know the great work that's being done. If you're not familiar, this is a great way to become familiar. And even if you are familiar, this is a great way to get an update and also to hopefully find out how you can help us get the word out around Temple as well. So we have a great panel here that's going to give us some updates and also talk about a little bit about how MICAH does the work it does. We have Dr. Stacy Spencer, Senior Pastor of New Direction Christian Church and also President of MICAH, as well as Reverend Ayanna Watkins, who is the lead organizer and executive director of the organization, and our very own Megan Keel, who actually works for MICAH now, and I forget your official title, which I should have checked with that right away. Jack of all trades. Her business cards are coming soon, but she has been involved in the organization since the beginning as well, and is very involved and committed to helping Temple stay connected as well. So I'm going to go ahead and hand it over to our speakers.
Thank you all so much. Thank you for allowing us to come and share with you on this holy day, and we pray that something will be said that will take your mind off of hunger for a little while. We started MICAH about 3 years ago. We were approached. Can you hear me? I can sit down. We were approached 3 years ago by a group called NOAH out of Nashville. Nashville organized around action and hope. And they asked us if we'd be interested in organizing around social justice in Memphis. And it's interesting because Rabbi MICAH and Rabbi Katie had approached me about a separate incident where some immigrant kids were being bullied at school because of all the heightened xenophobia that had taken place around the presidential election 3 years ago. And then that meeting came with Noah, and it just made sense that I would come off the wall like Nehemiah. There's so much to do already as a pastor. The only reason I was tempted to come off the wall is because of what my fellow colleagues were going through, what I was experiencing in Hickory Hill, and then with all of the generational poverty, the challenges that I had in my community, it made sense to come and organize with other like-minded people. And so we came together, it was about 6 of us, and we kept meeting month after month, building momentum by inviting other organizations to the table. And before you know it, we had a coalition, and we decided on a name, MICAH, Memphis Interfaith Coalition for Action and Hope. And we base our organization around Micah 6:8. What does God require of us but to do justice, to love mercy, and to walk humbly with our God? We then had an issues convention where we came up with 3 issues around equity: educational equity, intercultural and immigration equity, and educational equity. And we have been doing a lot of work around those 3 issues. It's just been amazing to see now 50-something organizations, over 30,000 Memphians represented, black, white, rich, poor, Jewish, Christian, Muslim, coming together to work around these issues around equity. It's been tremendous. It's probably been the highlight of my time, having lived in Memphis now 24 years. It's been the highlight of my career to work with brothers and sisters around organizing around social justice. So in a nutshell, that's what MICAH is. That's why we exist, to combat inequity, to combat racism, to combat economic inequity, educational inequity, all of that. And so Reverend Ayanna will now tell you some of the work we've been doing.
Thank you, Reverend Stacy. So it's good to be with you again. My name is Ayanna Watkins. I wonder, did you all happen to get this fun little sheet? Can you? Okay, excellent. If not, Rabbi Bess and Matthew are heading that direction. And so if you just want to wave your hand and they can get you one. Thank you, Greg. Excellent. So Dr. Spencer alluded to the 3 areas that we're working on that were chosen collectively by about 750 folks representing 50 organizations. And we decided on economic equity, educational equity, and immigration and intercultural equity, as you heard. Now, when you think about economic equity, one of the things that I thought about it even as I was driving here. I drove by some really beautiful houses and some really beautiful lawns. And I know that if I kept driving for 10 minutes in almost any direction, I would find very different neighborhoods with loads of properties where things were vacant or had been abandoned, had been allowed to deteriorate. I know that in some places, like on my street, I live off Union Avenue. Anybody familiar with Union Avenue? I live off Union Avenue. I now have 3 Starbucks within a mile on Union Avenue, right? And then I can keep driving for 15 minutes and I won't hit another one, right? So we see this economic inequity. It's not just Memphis, but Memphis is a pretty sweet case study for it if you want to see it in action. And so it's an issue that's close to folks' hearts. We want to think about, why did this happen? Our tendency is to think about things in terms of behavior. This must have happened because their behavior, they didn't make good choices, or they're lazy, or whatever the case may be. I talked about this a little bit on Sunday when I was with the congregation in Midtown in Idlewild, and said, that's not a racial thing that we do. We all do that. It's called fundamental attribution error. We have a tendency when we see something going wrong to think that it must be the person's fault that it happened to them. What we're trying to do with equity is bring all of our attention to the real sources of poverty, the true sources of inequity. And so we're doing our research, we're digging in, and we're finding out the places where that inequity is being born so that we can start to cut some things off at the root. So I want to tell you a little bit of a story, and this is where I want to have my brother and sister Elena and Greg wave, because they helped us with this research. Thank you. I want to tell you a little bit about an action that we did in Orange Mound. Anybody know where Orange Mound is? A very historic community on the south side of Memphis. And so we started to really work with the folks there, started to work with the bank, in particular First Horizon, trying to figure out the source, the root of this poverty. Now, if you look on your sheet, you'll see a 1-sentence description of what's happening there. I'm going to fill out that 1 sentence, just so you can get a sense of the kind of work we're doing, okay? So we were finding, and many of you may have even read the article about Orange Mound, asking the question, is Orange Mound past the point of no return? Did anybody see that article? It was about economic disinvestment. Orange Mound having been a thriving community about 50 years ago, and now on the edge economically, having trouble keeping people in their homes, having trouble keeping folks employed, and so on. What's happening there? So we started to dig down. And with the help of our researchers and some really open, wonderful community members, we started to find out some things where there was a disconnect between how we get money in our communities and how it's not getting to some places like Orange Mound. So let me give you an example. It's a young man in Orange Mound. I don't even think he's 30. Wants to buy a house in Orange Mound. Grew up there. He's thinking, I want to start my adult life here. I'm coming back home. Went off to college, did his thing, came back home. Identifies a house that he thinks he can work with, maybe get a little rehab and get it going again. The house costs $35,000. Okay? Does anybody know here what the minimum amount is for a home loan at most any bank you'll go to? What is it, Charlie? That's right. That's exactly right. And so now you're running into, now this man wants to own a home. He wants to invest in his community. He wants to bring something back to the place that helped to make him who he is. But he can't pull $35,000 out of his pocket. And when he goes to the bank to ask for it, it's too little to ask for, right? So these are the kinds of things we're figuring out and uncovering. So now the conversation with the bank becomes, can we adjust what a home mortgage loan minimum should be. And that just becomes a decision for the bank to take on, right? And so we can press on that. That's the kind of pressing that we're doing. In that case, we're doing it sort of in the corporate world. We also do it in other places, in the public sphere, in the government space. How many of you took a bus to get here to Temple, Israel today? I'm not raising my hand either. I drove my very cute Prius to get here. I'm very proud of it. It's my dream car. However, if I had wanted to get on the bus from where I was in Binghamton to where I needed to be here in Temple, Israel, I'd still be on the bus trying to get here, right? We know our transit system is not what it could be. It's not even what it has been. And so our team that's been working on transit under economic equity has been pushing, massaging, talking to residents, but also pushing our government officials to say, what are we going to do about this so people can get from point A to point B without having to buy a car, pay for insurance, and invest in that way? They can put that money elsewhere to build up their family. And after about 18 months of pushing, many of you may have seen that Mayor Lee Harris, our county mayor, made a proposal for how he was going to put money into the transit system, MICAH. That is the county putting money into transit, as far as we know, for the first time ever. So MICAH has had city funding, state funding, federal funding. Now it will have county funding. And so that's something that MICAH can kind of put their, claim on and say, we had a part in that happening. There were many people that wanted this, but we helped to put feet to the ground and fire underneath some officials to help make this proposal go from, where were some of the first conversations we had with Mayor Harris? Well, why should I put my money in that? Isn't the city gonna do it? What's gonna happen? But we know he had a little warmth in his heart. And he did want to make our city a place where people can move around freely. And so he brainstormed and we brainstormed and we pulled more people into the room to try and figure out where this money is going to come from. And suddenly, we're starting to see progress that may very well end up soon with millions of dollars being added, tens of millions of dollars being added to transit. So those are two of the ways I wanted to describe to you about the way that MICAH has helped to create positive change. And it's done with folks just like you and me, deciding we care about something enough to go to maybe 1-2 meetings a month, to sit with our government officials and some of our corporate folks to make some things happen. Sound good? All right, I'm passing it on.
So the question becomes, well, how does, in 3 years, MICAH come from an idea that folks in Nashville came and presented an idea to a room of 6 people to 12 people, we just doubled, to this past month, we had over 2,000 people at Mount Vernon Baptist in front of city and county government. So we went from that 12 people 3 years ago to now we're able to bring over 2,000 people together in one room. And if you looked into that room, who was there at Mount Vernon? Were any of you there? So how did that room look to y'all? Diverse? So I had a lot of people come up to me and say it was the most diverse space they had ever been in Memphis. I mean, we have our friends from our Muslim congregations, our Jewish congregations, Christian congregations, black, white, our Latinx friends. And so it really is a space where we are so segregated in so many ways in our lives, but when you bring something that brings us together, we can do that. And the way that we do that, the way that we brought MICAH together to be an organization of 60 organizations now, the way that we move this urgency around our issues is through a radical idea of relationships. And when you hear community organizing, you think, we're going to, we have to go in the street and go do this. The way that we built MICAH, the way that any strong, solid organization is built is by intentional relationship building.
And we are trained and we are taught about how to build these relationships. So we do it with each other. We do it within our congregation. And if you would, after you see this, if you would like to sign up to have a one-on-one with one of the MICAH core team members, we would love to do that for you, because this is how we build strength as we get to know one another. We also do it, we call it power one-on-ones. When we meet with elected officials, we met with almost all of the municipal candidates who are running in this most recent October election. We meet with the school board. All these people, it's all through intentional relationship building. And we call these we say that these one-on-ones really have 4 purposes. We're trying to build a relationship. We're trying to get information about somebody, and we're trying to get clarity around that information, and we're also trying to discover their self-interest. And self-interest is a word that you're going to hear a lot when you start to come to MICAH and to start delving into the issues, and it's not a negative thing. Everyone has a self-interest that they're willing to go to bat for, that they're willing to go to that extra meeting for, that they're willing to speak about, even if they're really afraid to speak, because of that self-interest. Uncovering that, because a lot of people can't, just if you ask them what it is, it takes some conversation and relationships to uncover that. So we do those things. These one-on-ones, it's not the conversations you probably had throughout the day. How are the kids? How are your parents? Can you believe how cold it is today? These are intentional, scheduled conversations where people you thought you knew that are maybe, passing through, you really get to know, because you're looking for the outcome. At the end of the conversation, you want to walk away and think to yourself and even say out loud to them, I wonder what we are going to end up doing together. That's the goal, that every relationship can build towards something. And that's how we move forward on our issues. That's how we get new partners. So when we have a one-on-one with you, and if you sign up and we call you, you're going to do 80% of the talking. I'm only going to do 20% of the talking, and it's only going to really be in questions and follow-up questions. And the same thing, we do that with elected officials as well, and bank leaders when we meet with First Tennessee. We're doing this to build a relationship and to really understand what is moving this person and how we can move together. So what I'm going to do, and if we have time, maybe you can do it as well, is I'm going to model the first few minutes of a one-on-one conversation with Stacy, my friend right here, and to see, and the two C's that we say you need to bring to these conversations, because at first they feel really awkward because you're used to just kind of having a back and forth conversation where they say something and then you ask a question, and this is really one directional, but you're coming into it with courage. And you're coming into it with curiosity. You have to be curious and you have to be courageous to ask the question that might feel a little awkward, but really can get to that next level. In the first 5 minutes of a one-on-one, we're not going to get there, but you're hopefully all of you, if you will give us your name and volunteer to sign up, we would love to just build the strength of our temple team and to do that. So when you were speaking before about how Rabbi Micah and Rabbi Katie were telling you about the student who had been bullied for their religious beliefs and how that was kind of a trigger for you to come off the wall and to really, you pastor a very large church, you run a community development corporation, you've established a community development corporation, you have a school, Power Center Academy. It's not like you're not already doing stuff for your community. What was it that made you think that you needed to add one more thing? You told us that one little nugget. What are some other pieces that were going on?
Yeah, so the political climate at that time, it really emboldened racist rhetoric. And I've seen it with some of my kids. My church is in Hickoryville, but live in Carterville. And on both sides of the railroad track, if you will, we had seen it happen. So somebody wrote the N-word on the desk in Carterville. My son, he come back home telling me stories about stuff that other students seen so many people angry, and I've said in Memphis, but I hadn't seen much organization. So for me to hear somebody say, we will help you organize to fight injustice, I said, I can get with that. Because I've always wanted to be a part of something where we organize to do something about the problem, and not, as Rabbi Greenstein would say, be gadflies, but rather to come up with solutions for the things we're up against.
So you talk about your son and you talk about the other students. What experience really sticks out to you in your life about what, obviously, racism is a part of growing up Black in America, but so everyone has, what do you really, I can feel the fire in your belly when you talk about the children in these instances. What was your experience growing up with racism?
Yeah, so one was very visceral. I grew up in rural Kentucky, predominantly white. My address was Route 1, Homestead, Kentucky. Grew up with a single mother, lived in a single wide trailer on welfare. But one of the things I remember is getting on the school bus, my first day of school in junior high, and the white school bus driver said, all you little N-words come up front so I can watch you. And so we had the humiliation of being categorized and had to come sit behind this bus driver who was white and also parked his car in my grandmother's yard before he began his route. So it was cemented in my head what others thought about me based on my skin color early on. And that followed me all throughout high school, into college, went to predominantly white institutions. So it's always been there with me. And so to experience it as a child, that trauma kind of set in my head that I don't want anybody to ever feel like that they have a stigma because of their skin color. And how can I fight against it?
So to pause right there, I can't tell you how many hours we've spent together. We did a week-long retreat that was training that anyone who's involved in MICAH can take part on, and it's a great growth experience. That was a residential 1 week experience. We've been in lots of meetings. I've never heard that story. But I know that he has a fire about injustice and because of something. And I've heard other stories, but I haven't heard this one. And so people tell me all the time, I don't need to sit down. We have groups. We have 60 groups in MICAH now. And they're saying, we all know each other. You haven't heard everybody's story, even if you know them so well. Even if you know your spouse, your parents, you can have these conversations. And from that, if that were a conversation, then I know next time that something happens related to a racial injustice issue, that when I have my list of one-on-ones and who I talked about and take notes afterwards, Stacy's someone who I would want to make sure and pick up the phone and say, we need to show up here, can you come? Because for some people it might be environmental issues, and you need to know that, and you need to know who's on your Rolodex to call, that we're going to go and we're going to do this environmental strike or talk about the aquifer. You need to know how you can build relationships and how you can build power, because power, the way we define it, is the ability to act. And if you don't have relationships, you don't have power. You don't have any ability to act. And that's how MICAH sees ourselves in a greater network of over 45 organizations across the country, is that it's about building intentional relationships, knowing everyone's self-interest, what's on our heart, so that we can then act. This is not about, there are lots of events where we come together and have a nice meal or we have a panel discussion, but this is actually, we're doing that for a purpose. We're coming together to act, to do the actions that Reverend Ayana was talking about, and to do that. So what time is it right now? We have 3 minutes. Okay, I won't make you practice. But please do, if you will allow us to have a one-on-one conversation with you. We've also done trainings to how to have this in a greater way in the temple, and it's not just for MICAH. This is for whatever organization you're a part of. It strengthens that and brings it. And the people you will meet from other organizations coming to MICAH meetings will just open your world from the silos that we live in, so that you really have a much wider breadth of relationships in Memphis. So we invite you. there is a list. There's 2 different handouts. They look the same, but one has all of the upcoming dates, including our next monthly meeting, which will be hosted at Temple. Prior to that, we have a core team meeting on a Sunday morning, and Rabbi Bass will tell you about all that from the core team. You want to take that? Okay.
So I love this focus on stories because it's something that we as the Jewish people and people of faith in general really understand. We read the same exact Torah portion every Rosh Hashanah and every Yom Kippur. And even if you had told the exact same story that Megan had heard before, you told a different one today, but even if it had been the same, just like we read the same Torah portions, we find something different in these stories every time we hear them. We find a different power. We find a different message. We realize something we didn't notice before. But if it's not clear from what these wonderful people have shared, we've got work to do. There's a lot of heartbreak in the city. There are a lot of things that we want to make better, more equitable, and just a place that we're proud to call home. And so there are many ways that you can get involved. One is signing up for the one-to-ones. If you didn't put your name and email address on a sign-in sheet, if you would please do that. Even if you think we have your email, just go ahead and give it to us again. We would love to add you to our list. And I also wanted to invite you to a few other things. MICAH's issue nights. How many people have been to an issue night or a task force meeting already in here? I thought there were quite a few people that have been part of that. So this is monthly, where the 3 task forces meet, which you heard about some of the work that they've done, which is incredible. 6 p.m. at Lindenwood Church on October 28th. So you can come to that. Also, Temple Israel's own MICAH core team. It's our team of committed people who want to be involved in the task forces, want to be involved in what MICAH's doing. We are going to meet, and if you don't have it already, there is one of the second handout says upcoming dates. It has all of these and more on it. But on November 10th, at 10:30 a.m. to noon, we are going to have our next MICAH core team meeting. It's been since May since we've met as a group, so we're really excited to get back together and start meeting again. How many of you were there at our meeting in May when we started to talk about all these different things the core team could do? There was a synergy, there was an energy in that room, really getting excited about what comes next, and we would love to recreate that on November 10th. And right after that meeting, on November 12th, the MICAH monthly meeting is here at Temple Israel. So different congregations around the city host the meeting for everyone, and all 60 organizations come together, and it's going to be here at Temple, and we hope that we will see you there as well. You can also volunteer your communications, financial, or fundraising skills to MICAH, which has different committees that are already doing this work. They need you. We need you. And so I hope that you remember the power of stories, and also remember that the story of the Jewish people is getting to something that's better. The Torah does not end with us getting to the land and saying, hooray. We stand at the edge of the land and say, we've still got work to do. And that's where we are right now with MICAH as well. And so we hope that you will join us, you will stand with us and say, there's work to do, and we are blessed to do it together. Yizkar's at 4:30. If anyone has questions, it sounds like our speakers are willing to stay for another moment or two, though they will have to run shortly. But we do, can we give them a round of applause for just spending part of our holy sacred day? You may be fasting, but hopefully this fills your soul, knowing that there is work for your soul to do in this city.